Hello. Can you hear us? Kari.
Hey Corey,
Hi. Am I saying your name right? Is it Kari? Kari. Okay. Thank you. Hello, darling.
how's it going?
Miss Little Sugar Bear is probably going to check out soon. I've been keeping her alive for almost 2 years now on your product. So it's good and bad.
That's always hard. I'm
I
sorry.
know. Thank you for saying that. I wanted to tell you exactly how I was feeling. I wanted to connect with you today and ask you questions about Fractal, of course, and that I just told you that I've been using the product. I just got so inspired by the fact that your product has given her an extension of her life, and she's pretty much been a happy, healthy kitty way beyond, I think, what we would have expected otherwise on normal pharmaceuticals. And I just am so impressed with the whole experience that I thought, why don't I start to share it and probably do a podcast? And we thought we'd start with you.
It's nice to have good medicine, especially for that end of life time. People or pets can be present more and a little less far out, let's say, on some of the pharmaceuticals.
Oh, yeah, I didn't even think about that. I think I've made quite an awesome discovery of finding that using the CBD products with the pharmaceuticals has actually been a lot better than without.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had many patients, both human and animals, that have chosen to do the combination. It is a wonderful combination if you're aware of any places where there could be conflict, which it's not completely conflict free, but it's paying attention to the little things.
Yeah, sweet. Thank you for taking the time. This is amazing, by the way.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry, I've been hard to reach. It's,
uh,
harvest out here in Humboldt, and I'm also trying to move and got all kinds of things going on.
All right. I want to hear as much as you can share. I don't even know what your role is. I don't know very little about you and your position with Fractal and the farming and the whole thing. So if you could just give me a little bit of background about that.
Yeah, this is going to cross over between humans and pets
Perfect.
a little bit here. So, Fractal originally started when I was living in Tenino, Washington. And Fractal was a medical collective where we grew organic hemp and cannabis and worked out of the Washington Farmers Market. I was offering plant medicines through the Sunshine Organics Collective. During that time, I started seeing patients one-on-one and being able to get direct feedback, which really helped me to know and understand what people wanted and needed from medicine and incorporate that into what I was doing. And at the time, I was working strictly with ethanol-based extracts, food grade extracts, which there's a lot of different means of extracting cannabinoids. And being an herbalist and a detoxification specialist, I wanted to have the cleanest medicine to make available to the public. I had a little bit of a different philosophy than a lot of the others at the market. I was trying to put forth edibles and things that were non-GMO and not full of sugar and really have healthy products, which I don't know if you've explored that market at all, but a lot of it is fillers and sugars.
Interesting.
um, yeah, then I started making dilutions and things like that could be used for pets, such as the tinctures. That was a learning process on its own because pets have different sensitivities to some of the terpenes that are in cannabis and in hemp. And so learning that was a big thing to understand on how to effectively design something that would work for both dogs, cats, horses, different animals. Cats in particular have the greatest sensitivity when it comes to terpenes. And one of the most common terpenes that's in hemp and cannabis is linalool. And linalool is something a cat can't process.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's found in lavender as
Oh,
well. And my company started as an evolution from the medical collective into right now what we're working on is becoming what I would call a white label company, meaning we're going to take some of the formulations that I've created over the years and make those available to people like yourself who would like to start a brand
Mm-hmm.
and be able to market that on their own. But in order to do that in a way that is proper, there's a lot of things that have to be in place for CGMP production and insurances and things like that. And so that's why we're delaying just a little bit to get everything in place for that to be insured and made at a CGMP facility so that we can ensure the highest integrity of the products.
Oh, okay. Wow, I love that. And I've been meaning to ask you, is there a carrier oil that you use with the CBD?
There is. I use a few different oils, and it really depends on what is being treated.
Mm-hmm.
So MCT, which is a medium chain triglyceride, is used, and that's commonly used. I also combine that with olive oil, which is a long chain triglyceride, as one formulation, and a second formulation that I use is camelina oil. And so it really depends on the purpose, which of those I offer.
Oh, okay. So in particular, is there one that you'd use just for cats?
So olive oil is something that in small parts, it's okay for cats. In larger parts, it's not the best.
Okay.
What I do typically use with cats is a small amount. It's a small amount of olive oil, a very safe amount, in conjunctions with the MCT oil. That would be the standard formula.
Okay.
When they when there's issues that can be resolved by omega-3s being present in the carrier oil, that's when camelina is used.
Oh, okay.
Camelina is a little more shelf stable and has a higher amount of omega-3s. That oil, I would say, is something I would recommend for the day-to-day preventative medicine and supplementation. Whereas the olive oil MCT oil with the medium and long chain triglyceride has a slightly different effect. The medium chain triglyceride is something that works with the brain and nervous system more readily, whereas the long chain triglyceride is something that gets deeper into the lymphatic system.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So I was just gonna give you an opportunity to maybe share something that you feel makes Fractal unique from all your competitors out there.
What's made Fractal unique so far has been the evolution from custom medicine and all of the feedback that came with it. It wasn't like I came to the table and said, I want to make a one size fits all solution. And that resulted in many formulas because every person, every pet is unique, and it's hard to have a one size fits all approach. And so I knew eventually I needed to reach that commercial market and make something that could be offered in a one size fits all sort of way, but also offer the educational services to help people understand that it's not a one size fits all thing and you're going to have to play with the dosing and things like that. And that's really
Yeah.
been the biggest challenge,
Mm.
is being able to convey that information to people so that they can get really the true benefit of it instead of just being like, oh yeah, I took this once or twice and I didn't really see a benefit. And so the education thing is a huge part of it.
Nice. Okay. And before we move on, when did you start Fractal?
Let's see. I started offering medicine around 2012.
Okay. Awesome. That's a long time.
Yeah.
Moving right along, I never really got an opportunity to sit down and actually even look at CBD or G or A or any of the products. And so just recently I've been able to do that. And I learned it's beneficial to research the quality of CBD products by reading the lab results. What's your 2 cents about that?
There's a lot of products on the market that aren't what they say they are, for one. That is very unfortunate. And that's the importance of the CGMP production that we're pursuing. And the reason we're pursuing it is because nothing leaves a GMP facility without lab test results. And so that to me is an important aspect because I want you to know and understand exactly what is in the medicine. In the kitchen apothecary, let's call it, cottage industry making products at your home, what's typically done is the extract itself is tested. And what I do use is an extract that goes into oil. And so those are weighed and then dissolved into the oil, and then the terpenes are added. And the reason I do separate terpenes is so that we can leave out some of the terpenes that can't be processed by cats, like the linalool.
Right. Interesting.
And I come from a background of alchemy, which is where you separate the principles of things into the three categories. There's three things you can extract from matter, and one of those things is its oil or its essence. Another thing is the body, which is salt. And then the other thing is the mind, which is spirit, which is like the fermented or broken down forms, which also serve as a delivery agent of those things. And then in alchemy, you would combine those three things back together. And so these tinctures are made in that fashion where we separate the parts and then we put them back together
Wow.
to give the greatest potency and to add characteristics that are normally missed. Normally, in just the oil extraction, you don't get salt because salt is not soluble in oils. And so there's different parts of the chemistry of it that are a big deal. I add one thing I didn't mention when you asked about the ingredients is I do add sunflower lecithin because it's a phospholipid, and the phospholipid will allow small amounts of water and oil to mix. And it also makes the oil emulsified so that it has better absorption within the gut.
Mm.
And so that is another aspect that makes it a very unique chemistry that makes it very different than other like other CBD oils or
That's beautiful. I love all of that. I'm so excited that we're interviewing you, by the way. This is great. So, do pesticides show up in the lab results?
I don't do the growing myself anymore. When I left Washington State, I left the growing aspect of it behind. There's something that we call category 3 testing here. And what that means is it's been tested for heavy metals, pesticides, and potency. And so that's how I test all my oils for those factors. And so it needs to be clean in those areas in order for me to use it as an input into production. But you wouldn't believe how all the testing I've went through. It's crazy. I have a tincture out on the market that's for cramps for women.
Oh, wow.
It's a tincture with water-soluble cannabinoids in it. We did that so that I could combine it with herbs like wild yam and cramp bark and yarrow are in that tincture. And in testing even the cramp bark and yarrow and wild yam, like sourcing to find pesticide-free herbs is even difficult.
Right.
So sourcing is a major part of putting out a clean product. And we went through a lot of suppliers to find clean herbs, and we have to test them every time we get a new batch as it comes in before we even do any production with it to ensure that it meets our quality standards.
Wow. That's really awesome. I commend you for that.
We've spent
Really?
thousands and thousands of dollars in testing. Yes.
Okay. I'm going to keep on hitting you with questions. Will you speak about CBD products on how they help animals with seizures in particular, and then humans, if of course you want to cross over?
Sure. We all have an endocannabinoid system, and an endocannabinoid system interacts with cannabinoids, and those can be endogenous or exogenous, meaning they can be generated within the body or they can be taken from plants. And cannabis and hemp are just one of the botanicals that do have cannabinoids. Other plants do as well. And so they're basically cannabinoids are neuromodulatory lipids that interact with the endocannabinoid system and cause certain responses within the body. Depending on what you're trying to treat, that's where dose is a major area of concern. Like if you're treating seizures, it's typically by body weight, and some seizures can be controlled with very little, like something like 1 milligram or less per pound of body weight, whereas some need as much as 10 milligrams or more of body weight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really an individual thing on how much is actually needed to find remedy. The nice thing about cannabinoids is that they're very safe, in that the tests that they did on the half-life, and like you couldn't eat enough cannabis or hemp to actually cause death. It doesn't impact the parts of the nervous system that are responsible for breathing and those sorts of things in a way that is negative. So for me, understanding that allows greater freedom in where you can go as far as dosing. And I know your cat was at the upper end of the numbers that I've worked with. And I know you asked me at one point, would it be okay to give her more?
Yes.
And my answer is, I don't always know, but I've never seen a negative problem that has been experienced, other than some animals have gotten diarrhea because they were taking the diluted version and taking more oil than they needed to take of the carrier. And so that's where it's important to have the regular and extra strength,
Yes. That was night and day for me. Yeah.
because you don't really want to give that much fat if you don't have to. You want to keep their nutritional proportions in order.
Exactly. So just targeting back on the cannabinoids and the seizures. So what I understand is that these target a certain brain receptor.
It's actually throughout our whole body. So there's the CB1 and CB2 receptors, and this is where it gets a little bit technical, in that the CB1 and CB2 receptors respond to different things. And this is why the CBG and CBD together is important, because then you're going to trigger both receptors rather than just one. CBD is a molecule that doesn't fit either CB1 or CB2 receptors perfectly, but it fits them well enough to trigger them. And so CBG actually has a little bit better response. The CB1 and CB2 receptors have different focuses. One is more the immune system, and the other is more the nervous system.
Oh, okay. The combination of the G and the D are targeting two things at one time.
Exactly, because then you're targeting both receptors. And so one of the things that we see when somebody starts using CBD oil for themselves or for pets is that it also helps them to sleep better. It helps with rest and relaxation. It helps with inflammation. And there's all of these very small benefits that kind of add up together to make the larger benefit. And some people miss some of those things because, say, they're treating for seizures, but all of a sudden they're sleeping better. And they're seeing these things happen, but they don't really know exactly why. And it is because the body will use it in the capacity that it's most needed. And regeneration and sleep are a huge part of the body healing and recovering.
Absolutely. So I would dare to say, like, just from what you said, I have the understanding that you can heal a body from using these products, but also say in this place of seizures where we think Sugar Bear might have a mass in her brain somewhere where she's too old to get anesthesia, so we will never know. So in this case, we're just like buying time, but it's probably something that will never be healed.
With the FDA, and you can't say that any medicine is healing
Right.
without a study, because then that's where if you make claims, then that's where you're going to have problems.
Correct.
But what I can tell you is I have seen people in pets improve their function and get better in that they feel better. I've seen them reduce the amount of pharmaceuticals and other things, and in some cases completely get off of those types of medicines. I think that working with the endocannabinoid system is probably one of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves.
Hmm.
But again, you can't really make claims based on what it's doing. And the beauty of it is it helps in so many different ways. Sometimes it's even hard for people to quantify what they're experiencing. And I have to be like, I suggest you make a journal and chart your doses and what benefits and differences within yourself or your pet, such as sleeping time, how much they're eating, how much they're drinking. Has there been any change in bowel movements? Just the regular things that are really the best way we have to assess what's happening in the body and if it's beneficial.
Yeah. I started journaling not only just to remember what dosages I gave her when, but, and so now I can say that it's been a year plus. I know I've given her the quality of life that probably no other medicine would ever do. She did in fact do what you said. She was able to get off most pharmaceuticals. I'm having to reintroduce the phenobarbital because she's seizuring like probably once a day now. And I think her body's just wore out. She's an elderly cat, but I just was wanting to touch on that claim that it's not to be made. There's just too many variables in any situation, circumstance, probably age, the health of the body, all these things probably just contribute way too many variables to make any kind of claims, and it's such a personalized basis.
And like I said, I've seen a lot of things that would be considered miracles in some ways. Even with, I could tell you the story about my dog, Buddy, and he did passive cancer and he had it on his bones, and it came on strong and very fast, and there wasn't a lot that could be done except for make him comfortable. As soon as I knew, I started administering cannabinoids to him. And he actually expelled a tumor from his body after
Whoa.
he started taking the cannabinoid medicines.
Wow. So that just came out through a bowel movement?
Yes. And it
Whoa.
was quite shocking.
Wow. Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah. Then I had another dog, this was years ago, and she had lots of problems. She had a degenerative cornea, is what it was called. She was losing her vision. And the vet put her on steroids. And at the time, I was just warming up to these new ideas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the vet told me at one point her liver is suffering from the steroids that are keeping her vision. So I think that you need to make a choice between her eye and her liver.
Mm.
And I was like, that doesn't sound like a good choice at all. I don't want to make that choice. And that's when I started looking, and we were able to get her off the steroids, get her eyes back to 100% vision,
Oh, wow.
and make her liver happy. And they told me she wouldn't live past 5 years old, and she lived to be 15.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
And I've seen a lot of amazing things and using CBD oils. And at that time, it was pretty much just straight CBD. We didn't really
Mhm.
have CBG oil and all of these other things available
Right.
at that time. And
Right.
so we're learning all the time, and I do spend a good amount of time on PubMed trying to figure out and update these treatments so that they are more effective as we learn.
So before I forget, because I think I am at the max dosage for sugar bear, I think she's about, gosh, she's probably anywhere between 12 to 13 pounds. And I am at 75 drops of both the CBD and the G combined. Would you say that I am probably maxed out?
I would say that you're probably maxed out from the studies that I've read, but not necessarily as far as what is possible that we haven't studied.
Okay. All right.
That's a hard question to answer, in that most of the studies have gone with animals up to that 10 milligram per pound dose. Beyond that, we don't really know. But honestly, I wouldn't be afraid to go
Okay.
higher, but I would just, again, keep that journal and watch for any signs that it's too much or not the right dose.
Yeah.
And that would be looking at, how is she eating? How is she sleeping? Are there any negative digestive issues that are presenting? Things like that.
Yeah, yeah. So I think I am going to push at this point in time. It's like you're like, I don't really have much to lose. And if it's, I'll be able to tell if it's too much. And so then I just stop there.
Yeah. Understand this, that in humans, we've seen people take enormous doses without any negative consequence. And by enormous, I myself have taken 2000 milligrams at a time just to see what it would do for my body. And so if you divided that, I'm going to divide it to see what that is by my body weight. So we're talking about like 15 milligrams per pound of body weight there.
Okay.
When humans and animals are different, they're not the same exactly.
Correct. Yeah.
And so animals do have greater sensitivity, I believe, to cannabinoids. And there is something of a tolerance that gets built up, because what happens with the endocannabinoid system is when you fill your receptors, there's something called receptor upregulation, which means they're like, oh, we're getting fed this, we're going to build more of these receptors. And so now there's more hungry receptors out there, and that's what tolerance sort of is. And that's why it's good to cycle cannabinoids and occasionally do take a day off or some breaks. You're going to just be fighting tolerance more if you don't have those occasional breaks.
Interesting.
Meaning you're just going to have to keep taking more and more to get the same effect.
Correct. Like any drug, right? Any drug.
It is, yeah. It doesn't take a lot of a break to keep that in check. I recommend with almost any herb that people cycle their herbs, and the goal is not to be dependent on any one thing.
Right, to actually
But
heal and
yeah,
move on. Yeah.
exactly.
Not be a term that's like the Western pharmaceutical philosophy. This is their lifers. So yeah.
Right.
So I guess because my question was, because I did notice a change in her bowel movements and consistency and inconsistency there. And I was wondering, is there like a byproduct or something that she's eliminating from the CBD products that would create that? Or if it's more, she's just creating a tolerance. And so then it's just like affecting her gut.
So it's hard to say without knowing all of the details.
Yeah.
Typically, when organs start shutting down at the end of life, you'll see changes in bowel movements and things like that for certain.
Okay.
It's important to notice if those things are related to the medicine, in that you gave a larger dose and now there's diarrhea that wasn't present before, kind of type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you lower the dose and it doesn't change, is it some other process within the body that is the cause of the diarrhea?
Got it. So
And
it's not so much,
so
it would never be really related to the product, the CBD product, so to speak. It's just the body's way of communicating.
that's not to say it would never be related to that. Again, like I said, if you take too much of the carrier oil,
Mm.
that if it's more fat than they're used to processing and things like that, that can cause diarrhea a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's worthy to be aware of how much you're dosing and like how that impacts their dietary needs and their nutrition.
Okay.
Cats are pure carnivores. They can tolerate a lot more fat than some other animals.
Yeah. Okay. So what is like your goal, like your future vision, and where are you like now? If you could just share with us, like, what is your ultimate vision? Where would you like to be in the near future? Can you do a share about that?
Yeah. So my vision is to share as much of these medicines as I can with the greater population. And that's why I've made somewhat the switch of doing less one-on-one consultations and more focus on trying to get some of my products out in the market to the public. Fractal is going to be releasing a couple of my first two topicals very shortly, and those are for humans, the way that they're made. And so the one is for the nervous system, so pain involving the nerves like sciatica, neuropathy, those sorts of things. And the other is for more muscular pain and inflammation. And so that those are called Neurolief and Deep Relief. And we hope to have those out here by the new year. And the second Thing we're focusing on is getting the white labels ready for people to bring forth into the market, because a lot of people respond to personal stories like your story, that you've been impacted and you and Sugar Bear had a greater quality of life for longer because of the medicine. And those stories really help people to understand what is possible. And it's a way to make more people educators, right?
Right. Get the word
And
out.
that's one of the reasons we're doing the white label market. And we've partnered with Cal Biotech Labs, which is a CGMP facility here, so that we can bring lower quantities, because a lot of the times starting a brand is really expensive, right? And especially if you want to go to a CGMP facility, we found this out when we went to create our tincture, which the one that's in the market is under the brand Essentra Health. And we went to a CGMP facility and they said, you need to make 10,000 pieces. That's the smallest that we'll consider. And people don't really have the money to put and or the desire, because that's scary to be like, oh, we're gonna get 10,000 of this and now we have to sell it.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
um and understanding like the shelf life and different things like that, like all the different aspects of it. And through this partnership we're able to bring low production numbers for people, so that the buy-in isn't such an enormous thing to actually
Investment.
get started and have your own small business, which I'm really excited about, because I've had many people say, I'd really love to do this, but I can't afford to start with 10,000 units or something
Right.
like that. We're going to do it production on demand, so that when you place an order, it's not going to be sitting in a warehouse somewhere waiting to be shipped out and possibly be 6 months old. It's going to be produced when you order it, and we're going to allow for those small quantities to be ordered, because we have the flexibility in partnering with this facility to do that.
Wow, that's wonderful. And then do you guys have a website going yet? Or
No, it should be up fairly soon. We do have Essentra Health does have a website, and you're welcome to check that out. And that's essentrahealth.com. And that's the water soluble cramp tincture that is for humans.
okay.
And it's quite amazing. And that medicine can be used, it's a unique tincture that can be used topically and internally.
Wow. Okay. And this is the only product that Essentra is carrying of yours, like that you produce.
Yeah, it's the only one in the market right now. We're going to be releasing some more here in the new year, though. So there will be some other products forthcoming.
Okay.
What we have planned for white labels are going to be the pet products, as well as some water soluble products that are combined with herbs. Those are going to be the tinctures. And then we also will have some topicals, both for people and pets.
Very good. This is amazing. And congratulations, by the way. This is a huge deal.
It is.
It sounds like you don't get very much sleep.
Not as much as I would like to, but
Right.
the
Yeah.
one thing is I take enough cannabinoids that when I do sleep, I sleep very well.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's fantastic. I can't wait to learn more about it. Just back to Sugar Bear, because I'm gonna start experimenting with her. What would be like my telltale signs, because she's got them all right now, that she's tired, that I should just pull back and just stop experimenting on the poor thing? Or is there anything in particular that you would say, look, if you have this combination of these three things, you might as well just give the poor thing a break?
See, that is a hard question to answer. Most animals are so loyal, they don't want to leave this realm,
Yes.
and they won't on their own in a lot of cases. Out of the dogs that I've had in my adult life, only one actually went on his own, and that was Buddy.
Right.
Actually, it's two. I did have a wolf dog hybrid. I used to work at the wolf sanctuary in Tenino.
Oh, wow.
There was a hybrid that came in and we didn't have any room for it, and she was such a sweet animal and she was so abused, and we got her a little doggy wheelchair. She couldn't walk.
Oh.
And she only lasted about 6 months, but she had way better quality of life in those 6 months. And, she waited until I got home to pass that
Oh,
day.
oh God. Wow.
And it was a sad thing. But ultimately, those are decisions between the vet
Right.
and the person.
Yeah.
Not being a vet, I can't say specifically, but what I can say is that cannabinoids are a very compassionate end of life medicine that help the animal to be more present during the time that it's here. And when those cannabinoids stop working or become less effective,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to turn to these really high doses, it's probably a sign that they're nearing that time.
Okay. That makes sense. The fact that I've had to reintroduce the pharmaceuticals is probably the telltale sign right there. Okay.
That would definitely be one of the things. And you have to consider a lot of different things in the life of the individual. There's just so much
Yeah.
that are a part of those decisions.
Yeah, I get it. All right. I think I'm going to let you go, but I so appreciate you doing this. When can we expect to see the opportunity to purchase white labels? What's your forecast on that?
I'm going to say it's depending on how, because we're just forming this partnership and we're waiting for the paperwork and stuff to come forward. And so I would say we're looking at 3 to 6 months, six being the long end and three probably being the shorter end. We're going to split it into two things. There's going to be the fractal health, which is going to be me releasing some of my topicals and things like that. And then there's going to be fractal formulas. And that's going to be the white label business where people can say purchase one of the same topicals I make, but they're going to put it under their own brand.
I love that. That's so great. If you don't mind me asking, because you piqued my interest because you're saying it's harvest time. We're in your area. So
Yes,
you're actually out there in the field working at the farms?
I live in Humboldt, and Humboldt's pretty well known for its cannabis scene, right? And part of what I do here right now is there's a lab here in Humboldt that I've been able to do a lot of my research and development from on the cannabis side, meaning working with THC as well. And that being very regulated and everything like that. But having the lab here allows me to have a place to go in and do R&D and have access to all of these farms that are producing high quality cannabis. Unfortunately, in Humboldt County, they've made a rule against hemp because they're concerned that having hemp grown here could contaminate their cannabis in some way,
Mm,
meaning cross pollination and things like that.
yeah.
And so they've banned the growing of hemp within this county.
Oh my gosh.
But again, it's a really great place for me to be able, because they have equipment that I don't have access to anywhere else, which like a microfluidizer, which is the same machine that they use to make lipid nanoemulsions for the vaccinations and things. It's a pharmaceutical type machine that you're not going to find at any kitchen apothecary.
Wow. Wow. That's great. I'm so happy for you that you've had these experiences.
Yeah,
That-
absolutely. But I do get out to the farms. I do go tour the farms once in a while. And again, sourcing is a major important aspect. But this is not where the hemp for
Mm,
the tinctures like you're using are coming from.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I so appreciate everything we just did. And I am going to ask you one more question. It's the green powdered is CBGA, correct?
Yes, it's CBGA and CBDA, which is the acid compounds, meaning the raw compounds. They haven't been heated. So it has a slightly different impact on the body.
Okay. I've read about it enough to know, but I was like, what are you calling that? And it's an extraction process that is there's zero heat because if you apply the heat, then it reverts back to the CBD, correct?
So yeah, it's called decarboxylation when you heat it and it releases the acidic component. And so it will change from CBDA to CBD.
course.
And so preserving that acid compound has that slightly different impact on the body. It's a little bit stronger as far as being an anti-inflammatory, and it has a lot of this same impacts, but also slightly different ones. And then you're preserving all the raw compounds of the medicines. So they've done some studies on plants to see when they peak their cannabinoids. And what that is and why it's unique is that powder is harvested from plants when the cannabinoids haven't expressed themselves outwardly of the plant yet. So they're still in their water soluble format,
Oh,
meaning they're still within the vascular system of the plant and they haven't formed the flower. So it's pre-flower that those cannabinoids are derived from. What they do is they cut the plant, and within 2 hours of cutting, the plant is juiced and put into a freeze dryer. So there's never any heat and it's incredibly fresh. And it's not actually from a flower, but from the plant in its vegetative state when the cannabinoids peak.
wow.
So we looked long and hard to find someone who we believed was processing the juice product, because having a viable juice is a very healing thing. And it's also non-psychoactive when it's like it should be a part of our diet, and is what I believe. It
Okay.
should be
Wow.
something that we eat on our salads. So the juice, like when you take an ounce of juice, it's incredibly healing. And so this is the closest thing that we've found to giving someone fresh juice.
Wow. Fantastic. Would you say that the freeze drying process is an essential part of it, or is it maybe because why can't we just go juice some herb?
You can. It's a part of it is about knowing when to cut the plant so
Okay.
that you're getting the most cannabinoids out of it.
Right.
And it takes a lot of energy to grow a plant to flower.
Yes.
If you understand the life cycle of cannabis and hemp, you're growing all season, and then the flower is at the end of the season. And then those flowers have produced trichomes. At that point, it becomes like the cannabinoids are lipids, they're neuromodulatory lipids. So they're fats, and fats don't come through in juice well.
Oh, okay.
And so when you're juicing it, you're losing a lot of all that energy that they put into outwardly expressing those cannabinoids. So learning when to cut and grow your own, like ideally, that's the freshest and that's the best, in my opinion. This is the next best thing.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. Wow. You are like a genius. You're all self-taught then.
Yes, I consider that the plant has taught me. Because I've gone through a whole evolution of learning. Like I started growing and started working in my kitchen.
Right. That's amazing. You
And I didn't know about oil and water solubilities and all of these things. And it ended up being that through working in this lab, I've been able to study with someone who did work for a pharmaceutical company and was making the nano emulsions. And that's who taught me about water soluble cannabinoids and things like that. And so the market has evolved incredibly in the last number of years.
yeah.
And just like in the last maybe 3 years, the amount of innovation in cannabis is amazing. Yeah, THC is one aspect of it, and it's something that some people are open to, some people are not. And there's full spectrum medicines. We've learned how to separate it too, which is something that when I began, we didn't really know how to do any of that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. I could talk to you all day long. I'm going to let you go. You're so
Okay.
amazing. Thank you so much.
I
Yeah.
hope I gave you
You
the information that
you
you
knocked
needed.
it out of the ballpark. It's awesome. Now this is like way more than I expected. It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I would say if
Okay.
you need something to let me know
Okay.
as soon as you possibly can.
Okay. I'm gonna go look and see what I have. As it is seen in the moment, I'm not so sure how much more Sugar Bear wants to take, but I'm probably gonna need it for myself.
I was gonna say, and actually I've told that to many pet owners, like if you end up with extra, it's all human grade.
Yeah, just take it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And so, like, I've never asked you about dosage for myself. Should I revert back to the numbers that you were giving? Could you tell me, like, how many drops? I should take a day for myself for, say, a mental stress situation?
So I like to take around 20 milligrams, 25 milligrams. Some people like just to take 10 milligrams.
Okay.
Others take 100 milligrams at a time. But if you're just talking about stress reduction, helping your body rest and recover a little bit quicker, those sorts of things, I would say in the 10 to 25 milligram
Okay.
range.
And is that per day or every 12 hours? I know these are really hard
So the
numbers.
receptors typically, from what I've read, clear about every 4 hours or so.
Okay.
That's why when you're dosing to prevent seizures, as an example, you do it every 4 hours.
Right.
Whereas if you're just doing it for rest and recovery, you might just take it at night before you go to bed, kind of type thing.
Okay.
I like to dose in the morning my CBG and in the evening CBD. That's what I find best for myself because I find CBG to be a little bit more energizing
Mm.
and CBD to be a little bit more relaxing.
And
But I do take the juice, I make those in capsule form,
okay.
and I take the CBDA, CBGA every day.
In the morning.
Yes, I do find it to be a little bit energizing. And so I take that. Actually, I take a lot. I take 2 grams a day, which is like 4 capsules in the morning and 4 at noon, which is probably more than I need to.
Right. You just feel
But
like you're getting that
because I
extra.
work with it and I have access to it and I find that it really helps my body, I take that much.
I see.
Um, my mom is an example. She took two and that was like enough for her. She was like, "Oh, I couldn't fall asleep if I took more than that."
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Um, and so that's why I suggest with the powder that you take it in the morning and noontime, but not necessarily at night. Some people will not have any issues and can take it right before bed. It's very much how sensitive people are.
Okay.
It's something that I've been doing some research on and working on some different formulas, but they're not quite ready to be released out to the world yet. I'm still doing the R&D on those.
Okay. Perfect. Gosh, you've been a wealth of information. Thank you so much. I hope you have a relaxing evening ahead of you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that we had the opportunity to connect.
Thank you, Kari.
Yeah, you're very welcome, and it's good to chat with you.
Bye
All
bye.
right.
Bye.